Hey guys, we are back with another player interview. This time we are here with Clayton.
Hi.
And Clayton, what character do you play?
So I currently only have two characters at ShiftedLands. I play Arden, who is a human, and I play Beazle, who is a goblin. If I were to describe them in any sort of archetype, Arden is on the path to becoming a paladin, and Beazle is a sort of tricksy, wizardy magic user.
Awesome. And you said they're both humans at the moment, right?
No, I actually didn't say that, but one is a human, and one So yes, Arden currently happens to be a swamp goblin because of some wild magic, but that'll be fixed next time I play him. And yeah, then Beazle's always been a goblin.
I was gonna
So
say
currently they're both goblins.
it's a rare time when that happens when you have two goblin PCs, but
It is a rare time.
for all intentional purposes, you are a human and you definitely intend on becoming a human.
Yes, I just thought it'd be funny if I walked up to my mentor as a swamp goblin and she wasn't there.
Yeah. So what brought you into not specifically Shifted but LARPing in general?
So it was actually back in I believe 2019. I was I went to a Ren fair and in Idaho, of all places, a small little run fair. And while I was there, one of the groups that had a booth set up was a local LARP, and they had a roped off area and a pile of weapons where you could go in. They explained the basic rules, and you could just fight. And LARP had been something I've always like wanted to try and like been really interested, even since I saw it depicted in like pop culture and in shows and stuff. I've just always thought it looked super fun. So I was happy to give it a try, and I had a blast with it. I spent like most of the rest of my time at the Ren Fair at that booth, and then I went back the next weekend to that same Ren Fair, um, so I could do the LARPing again,
Yes, the
and
fighting.
yeah, the fighting. And then after that, I found out they had weekly practices, and then once a month they would do a game with actual role play and stuff at a park.
Awesome.
Um,
That sounds cool. What was that called?
it was called Legends of Gerard. I believe it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But
It was pretty small,
ah, just like a
but it was a
local
small.
pop-up type thing.
It was, yeah. Right when I joined, it was kind of transitioning from like it was only 4 years old, and it had been like just like a backyard LARP with friends, and but it was getting right to the point right around when I joined where they were trying to transition it into like an actual, organization.
Yeah, like here's a
Um,
Facebook post, like everybody come if you want.
and I think just it didn't survive the growing pains of that
Oh, that's unfortunate, man.
due to a lot of factors, but
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that with this interview.
Yeah, so that's how you got into LARPing. So then how did you
Mhm.
find Shifted Lands particularly?
So, unfortunately, during the pandemic, I couldn't LARP. Everything was closed, and I ended up moving back to Ohio from Idaho during the pandemic. And when I got here, I started just looking for anything in the area so that when things started to open up, I'd be ready to just go and get started. And I found a few. Um, but Shifted Lands was definitely the friendliest. And what I mean by that is some of the other LARPs that I, reached out to, I'd ask questions and then they just drop me a link to the rule book and not answer my question, or like they wouldn't really interact with me very much on the Discord. But when I just messaged on the Facebook page that I was interested in learning more about Shifted Lands, I had like I think two people reach out and PM me, get me in the Discord, and everyone was very happy to answer my questions. There didn't seem to be any like gatekeeping or passive aggressive stuff. So that's why it was the LARP I ended up actually like showing up to, just because with the other ones, if they weren't going to, help me with some of my questions, I didn't end up going to
Yeah.
those ones, at least not for a while. This year I've been trying more LARPs, but um, definitely ended up joining Shifted Lands because of the friendliness. And they even had me on a call like a couple weeks before the game so that I could invoice talk with multiple people um,
Really? That's super
about
cool.
about my character and my build and stuff.
That is super awesome. That's like a big thing that Shifted Land that I've noticed as well with Shifted Lands is that we're like accessibility is such a high priority for most people. Like most of the marshals, they want like so many. They want new people to have like a good time and have an important experience. And like that, I think in the interview we did with Michael and Elizabeth, they like he was talking about like the number like the culture of shifted lands is very important and we're always like welcoming new people and like I think that really is a testament to the shifted lands culture in general. Like we pride ourselves on being accessible, helpful to like new players. And
And that's
how long have you been playing shifted lands?
I've been playing Shifted Lands for about 2 years and a couple months. So I started in June of 2021.
21.
Yeah, June of 2021. So two
Oh,
years and a couple months. Yeah, Arden, my human character, hit his 2 years in June, and then Beazle hit his 1 year in August.
awesome. So then, what has your experience with shifted like playing? Like you've played for 2 years now,
Hmm.
and you got out of the like beginner phase of the game because I really think that there's like this, and you've probably been a lot closer to it than I have recently.
Hmm.
But like there's really a I'm a new person, I'm a younger traveler type of about a year that you kind of got to get through
Hmm.
before your character like and there's nothing wrong about being in that period. It's just like there's certain fights that you can't really like enter effectively
Yeah,
without uppers. How do you feel about the experience now that you've gone through that and you're like a prominent character? Because I've heard from other people that you've had like some serious cool arcs happen to your character recently.
I have. I definitely consider myself lucky on that, but I do think that plot does seem to be really good about, yes, it's true. When you're starting out for a year, there are going to be some things where technically no one can tell you no, but people are going to highly recommend that you don't. And even if you do go, which I have, which when I was
Yeah,
really
that's
small,
like
I
the whole
did, I
point.
did, I did end up going on some really big things, and you kind of aren't super useful. So
That's like the whole story that me and my brother went through was like for like a year and a half we were our characters like our mechanical skill sheet said that maybe we shouldn't go on this thing and we like beg and we were like and it comes off like from an outside perspective as gatekeepy,
mhm.
but it's not really gatekeepy because like people let you go. They'll be like, sure, if you want to like come on
Yeah,
this
no.
adventure, we're just saying there's a high chance you're gonna die.
And
Like,
when you show up, like a lot of the monsters can't be affected by your stuff, and yeah, it can feel unfair, but I think it's just important, like, to let new players know that, like, like it's not that we don't want them to participate. It's just part of the simulation of becoming more skilled in the game.
yeah, like this,
Um,
like all those super high level adventurers, high level, quote unquote, high builder, like builder, like more experienced travelers is typically the word they use for it. But
mhm.
it's like people who have a very developed skill character sheet. Uh, those monsters are particularly cartelled to around that character level, and like having newer people on gives them a higher chance of getting like Vorpal slayed.
Yeah, exactly. And but now I don't think that is necessarily a problem if plot has plenty of things for the newer travelers to do, which I would say most of the time they're really good at. I have been to a couple games where things were kind of light for the newer people, either as a new person myself or just looking at them and kind of realizing. But I would say that overall, um, plot team is really good about having multiple mods throughout the day that are like geared towards the newer travelers, or the newer travelers can go on with the bigger people and it's just fine. There's stuff that they can do, or there's some where they straight up restrict people above a certain build, like, oh, you're too conspicuous, you can't go do this. And I think that those are some of the funnest mods I've done.
Yeah.
I actually have had the opportunity to lead some of those as the resident, quote unquote, big player. I was kind of just barely getting into like medium status. This
Yeah,
was
that's a very fun to go on when you get to lead all of the younger travelers. Those are fun
yes,
mods. You're like the
And
slightly bigger guy.
yeah, and Arden, with his personality and the type of character he is, just really loves that kind
That
of role.
leadership role, yeah.
And I love just trying to give direction to the newer players, but not not bossing them around and giving them. Not, I'm not trying to steal the thunder too, because I go in there with a threshold of 12, and they will usually on those mods have certain monsters that swing a certain amount when they're hitting me. Um, but like I'm not trying to show off. I'm more so just trying to protect the ones who come along who aren't really fighters, because I was with those mods, I was really trying to encourage more scholarly, researchy, crafty people to come, because um, we were getting ancient artifacts, and I thought that there would be ways that they could help, which there was. And I thought it was great we were able to have a mod with the people who never leave town,
The
and
traditional crafty sit at the tavern
yeah,
characters.
exactly. And they had stuff to do, and then the rest of us, who were all fighters, the newer fighters and myself, just basically protected them and kept them alive.
Yeah, those are really fun mods when you get to involve people that don't typically go on out on adventures. Like, and
Yeah.
I love when you're halfway through a mod and they're like, "Well, this lever is broken. We need a weaponsmith with production to be able to apply production to fix this lever to open this gate or whatever." Right?
Hmm.
Like like, "Hey, you spent some production on this," or like, "Hey, like I love those traditional D&D like D&D esque like hey, this thing's in your way, but it's like a pretty easy fix,
Yeah,
and like
they're
use
fun.
a unique way to fix it. Those are really cool. So so what would you? That's sort of what your experience with Shifted Lands so far has been, as a whole
Um,
per se.
yeah, I would say up to a point. Yeah. Um, I would say with both my characters, they're kind of just crossing out of the threshold of being like new, and they're into kind of like middle ground.
Yeah, going
I
on that
mean,
mist walk with Arden was pretty fun.
yeah, I mean, Arden is hopefully in a couple months going to be augmenting. I could probably do it sooner, but I'd really like to do it at Harvest for, thematics.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, what is an archetype of your character or what do you like to portray the most with your character? You can be with Arden or Beazle. I mean, you have two completely different characters, which I think is really cool. If you want to
Yeah,
talk about the differences,
intentionally I made the second one like the polar opposite of the first one. But yeah, so with Arden, um, he's definitely lawful good. He's not very smart. The way I play him is he's kind of the like not very bright but well-intentioned and good-hearted warrior. He likes helping people. That's why he wants to become a paladin. He's a healer. Uh, he uh, he likes helping out. He's not perfect. He has some flaws. Um, he was actually, you didn't see him when he first came out, but he had a little bit of a mischievous streak,
oh,
and he's had to work on that and, become a little bit more serious and noble. And not that he still, he
a
can still
lot
have a
of the
good time,
newer
but
that's a lot of the newer character, like straight out of the gate, like you're just getting into the LARP. You want to have some fun, right? Like a lot of, and I think a lot of
exactly.
people go through that transition where it's like, I'm a brand new character. I have time to make, and it's a lot like life, where you like early on you have a lot of time to make mistakes and learn from them,
Mhm.
and then when you sort of get into the more advanced stuff, a lot of people like really dive into the more serious role play,
Yeah.
and I really like that. That's part of the culture too.
And
Honestly, is like some of my favorite mods I've ever been on. When I first started playing, it was let's go touch a pool of magic just to see what happens. Like, and you could do that because you're like a brand new character. You
mhm.
don't got anything to lose.
Yeah.
But if I get hit with an unlearn and lose my entire Zen tree, I'm gonna cry about it. Like,
Hmm.
same thing with people in advanced paths and augments. Getting hit with de-augment is not fun.
Yeah, and I think creating the second character, who's a little bit of a dirtbag, allowed me to just channel all of that stuff from Arden into him. And now Arden can be kind of more noble because I've already got that stuff out of my system by the time that I'm playing him. Or like if I think, man, this would be so fun to do, I can think, I'll just do that as Beazle, and I can because Paladin is definitely a role play heavy
You have
path
to
to
take an
take.
oath. You have to follow rules.
Yes, and like your word and your actions are very important. And unfortunately, not all paladins care about that, and that's why a lot of people hate paladins. But Arden is trying to be an example of a good paladin.
Yeah. So that's like Arden, and then we keep hearing a little bit about Beazle. So if Arden
Yeah,
is like lawful good paladin, what is Beazle then?
Beazle is lawful evil. Um,
Oh.
I like lawful characters. I like having like a code and standards. And with Beazle, he's an opportunist, but he's careful. He tries well. With last game, maybe needs to be more careful, but he's pretty careful. Like I didn't just walk in a game and start, killing towns members or anything, but he loves money. He wants to get as rich as possible. So it's kind of fun playing him as very sleazy, very much trying to milk everybody, or not everybody, but every opportunity for as much money as he can, and people rolling their eyes. But
And that's
you know,
like
it
that's one of the coolest parts about this game is that there's space to do that type of character archetype in Shifted
yeah,
Lands. Obviously, people the concept like we have rogue marshals, right? Like for a
yes, we
reason.
do. It's not a popular thing to do, and it's definitely something that if you're going to do it, you need to be really careful, and you need to know that, like, if you get caught, the consequences are pretty dire, and you can't get upset about that.
Yeah.
Basically, you need, um, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So, it's a lonely path because Beetle doesn't have a lot of friends, and so I talked to a character who plays a Phil Shard, who I knew this
Ooh,
information out of game,
the
but
elephant in the
Beezel
room,
doesn't know.
Felchard.
Yes, and the wizard thieves, and I asked him about rogue stuff, and he's like, it can be really fun. It really comes in handy sometimes. He's like, but the unfortunate thing is even when it comes in handy and you get to use it to be the hero of the day, you can't always tell everyone. Because sometimes you need you know thievy type stuff on mods, or it really comes in handy. But because there's such a stigma around,
Around that archetype.
yeah,
And I think it really just comes from like people having played rogues in D&D and like
yeah,
that's like what people's idea of what filtered is. But I don't think
yes,
people have played around a well, that's the funny part about filtered is that you can't really say you've never met one because you don't know.
it's true. Um,
There could be lots of filtereds in town.
there could, I know of one, but there could be more. Um, but with the rogue stuff, it can be a lot of fun. It really gets your adrenaline going. I know that I have had Beazle steal a few things, and oh, it's just such an adrenaline rush. I love it.
And
Um,
so and like this
so
is a
that's a
safe
fun role play aspect of the game for me. It's and and it probably might be good to clarify that when you steal something, the purpose of the rogue marshal is so that the person you stole it from knows. And like, for example, if that was just their personal out of game belonging, it gets given right back.
yes.
Or if it was, but if that's a game item that has a tag that does something and you get to keep it. Breezel has a magic bracelet that he stole from a player right in the middle of bar.
So yeah, like that's a yeah, you're completely right there. Like there is the thing about Shifted Lands and the in-game being a well, and I like not no shade towards anybody, but the in-game being a dirtbag stuff is very doable, and the reason is because we have such a because it goes back to the community, right? Like everybody understands it's exclusively an in-game thing. It is
Yes.
in no way a personal attack. It's in no way meant to ruin somebody's day, and it's
Yes.
also really freaking hard to get away with,
It's
honestly.
really hard to get away with. You have to be
Yeah,
really careful. And I would say too, something important though to keep in mind if someone wants to do a character like that is, it's a cooperative game. It's PvE. It's not PvP. So even if you play a character who's not the nicest person, you're still going to need to cooperate with
yeah.
town to get
Creating
things done. You're
enemies
just
within
not gonna
town is a
Yeah,
bad idea.
you're just not gonna have fun if you try to solo it. Like I just would imagine that that would get really old really fast. Yeah, with all the different skills in our game, you need the whole town to survive. So not everyone in town sees eye to eye, but um, and there's varying alignments that I would say, but we're all on the same team.
Yeah. And to further clarify, because I just really want to nail this down for anybody listening, we have special marshals called rogue marshals. This has nothing to do with the pool rogue. Um, like this has nothing to do with the rogue pool. Think more like rogue D&D, where stealing stuff, breaking into things, getting past unpassable barriers, those are all rogue martial activities. Um, and what you do is that before you do anything like that, you go find an official rogue marshal and you say, and you go talk to them out of game, out of character, and you say, hey, my character is going to go attempt to do this, and then they have a rogue marshal watch you the whole time as you do it. That way they can like confirm, and also, uh, and obviously like you, a lot of that stuff runs into opportunity. Um, and one of the cool things about our culture is that people are pretty nice about it. So if you like swipe something very conveniently, the first thing you do is you go straight to a rogue marshal and go like, "Hey, in game, I just did this." Right? And then the rogue marshal's job is to like check all the boxes and then facilitate the physical representation, the phys rep. So in this case, the actual bracelet, like itself. Not and then like you get to like you said, you got to keep the item tag for it. Like you have this magical item now, but the phys rep that was literally somebody's bracelet gets facilitated through the rogue marshal. And out of game, the character knows, hey, this got stolen. But in game, the character should not metagame in any sort. And like they just lost it, or they couldn't find it, or they could assume it got stolen. But that's just to
Yes,
clarify on what those rules are actually like in game.
and it's unpopular. A lot of the current player base, not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people necessarily like, no one likes having their stuff get stolen. So that's why you have to be really careful. There are consequences for it, as I experienced
Oh,
recently
yeah,
with Beazle. So, but and also too, we actually don't currently have a lot of rogue marshals. I've had to just go to like the game owner,
yeah. Plot
um,
marshals
or
work too.
or just plot marshals, because that they can. They're certified for most things, but someday if we have a lot of players who want to play characters like that, maybe there will be a need. Maybe we'll train some more rogue marshals, but currently it's not a super popular
Marshalship.
uh, aspect of the game that I see a lot of people using. Um,
Which is really cool. I think the fact that Beazle is here and like the fact that the character like that is being played in game adds to the world. I think that is
well,
super awesome.
I hope so. I hope it doesn't bug people. And people have told me, like, because people get really upset with Beazle and don't seem to really like him in game, but it's just roleplay. And then out of game, they tell me, hey, you're doing a great job. Your costume's great. Um, like, Beazle's great. Like, in game, my character doesn't like him or trust him, but, like, he's a great character.
Yeah. Like it adds to the living world that like, oh yeah, these type of people, this type of person lives in
Yeah.
town. Like uh
And I know for a fact there are other characters in our game who they're not like thieves, but they are like, might could be considered
yeah.
evil. They definitely want things and want to accomplish things that if town found out about, they'd be upset about. And you have the freedom to do that. You just have to be discreet about it. But yeah, that's pretty much probably so a little bit about some of the archetypes of the characters that I play.
Yeah.
Can I talk a little bit more about Arden?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I wanted to just throw in one
Oh, go
thing
ahead.
here, which is that this game, so like I've been playing since 2016, I want to say, and like back then, being a scumbag was like acceptable most of the time in town. Like it was, this game has very much transitioned. So like, because this game originally started in like what 1998.
Yeah,
We're
and it's
over
evolved a lot from what
yeah,
I've heard.
and it used to be a very hardcore sim like world where a lot of people would die. Like you'd get Vorpal Slate on like your first game, and PvP was just as much likely to happen to you as PvE. So, um,
Wow.
yeah, and like apparently it's transitioned. So like PvP, it's not that you can't do PvP; it's completely viable to do that. It's just that the culture in game has shifted. ShiftedLands has shifted a kind of a way to that, and it's now more of this cooperative storytelling game with heroic aspects.
Hmm.
And uh, like the example that I wanted to point out is that I when I started playing around around the 2016 mark is when that really kind of started to fade out, and it was with a big character. There was a big character, which I don't want to say their character name, um, but there was this big character that was a total scumbag, like did horrible like dirt nasty. Like he was straight evil alignment, you know, like.
Hmm.
And he was a towns member, and he like he was civil in town, but anytime he were out of town on an adventure, he'd go on adventures to explicitly do evil things, and that's totally fine in my opinion. In my opinion, this is a living world with there are going to be evil people in there, and part of the fantasy too. Some people hate, like they go to their job and they have to be nice at work and they have to be cool with all these people, and some people need an outlet to express, you know, um like their anger, or it's nice to be, everybody understands that like it's fun to be evil a little bit, like I'm the bad guy. and
It is fun.
and that character went to almost a little bit of an extreme, and there was like a huge, I remember because it was like I was like in my first year when it happened, and there was a huge trial that brought like multiple NPC paladins to it. There was like trueborn dragons there, and they had to like have a council as to like what to do with that. And I remember like that after that event, the idea of doing stuff like doing super bad evil stuff was like it's frowned upon in game 100%, but out of game people kind of like transitioned. I think that was the moment when the game started transitioning completely. Like it was already started going that way, but it
Hmm.
transitioned completely out of like, hey, this is no longer a PvP game, this is a PvE game.
Hmm.
And
That
that's
makes
all a
sense.
culture thing because the rules haven't changed on PvP. You can initiate combat with people whenever. But
But
yeah, sorry.
culturally, it's
But you wanted to
changed.
talk more about Arden. I just wanted to throw that in
Yeah.
there. Like I know this like specific moment that like caused the game to do that. Sorry, but this is an interview for you, so feel free to talk more about
Oh,
Arden.
all good. I think Arden is a really interesting character, and I think a good example of how you can kind of have like an arc. Basically, he had a 2 year long arc that uh, kind of like a big plot arc. I don't need to go into that, but um,
Well, that's the next
one
question. So,
one thing that he has dealt with is doubting himself, just as a role play thing, and it's been a really fun thing to role play, and it's been really cool role playing him, improving and getting better. A big thing is everybody would get on him for the way that he would fight, where I would just charge into combat without thinking and then die.
like Leroy Jenkins in
And
it.
yeah, exactly. I got obliterated that way, and
Oh no.
um, it's been cool, seeing like having people now who be like, "Hey, Arden, like you actually fight pretty good and use like good strategy and aren't dumb." So that's a fun thing about it is long term over time, having other players notice you out of game, but also your character, like improving and learning. That's been really fun, and he's come a long way now that he's almost a paladin.
So yeah, that's a awesome thing about Arden, and it's really cool. I love hearing that like such a, and you're not, I in my eyes you're not new anymore. You've clearly put in your time for the game, but like
Hmm.
it's cool to hear about a newer person getting this kind of like plot. Like that's so cool in my opinion. Like
Yeah. And
so
what did you say your next question was?
what's an arc that you're proud of participating in with your character? So if you'd like to go into that big plot thing that you got,
Sure.
that would be
I'll
super cool.
I'll go ahead and sum that up. So that starts with my very first game, where we went on a mod. It was a newbie mod, like I was talking about, which was great. It gave us a chance. That was really my first chance to get a bunch of good fighting in. We were fighting a bunch of undead as we were traversing this dungeon, and when we got to the bottom, there was this ancient entity that took the form of this disembodied helmet, who was speaking to us, and Arden was unsure about himself, and he really wanted to volunteer to be the one to take the entity's magic ring, but he hesitated because he didn't want to be like obnoxious. And however, a couple other people stepped up, but they were turned down. And then Arden stepped forward, and the the helmet chose him, and if he accepted, and so Arden got this magic ring that was then used later that day to locate a wayward paladin who was causing some strife in the dreaming plane and the nightmare plane. So it was really cool to be like a key part of the final mod of the game, my very first event. It was
That
huge.
sounds so
It
cool, man.
was
That
part of
actually sounds sick.
it was part of why I had to come back. And it's also part of why I kept playing Arden, because he was actually originally going to be kind of a placeholder character until I figured out what I
Like
really wanted to
a
do.
learn the game character.
Yeah, but I had way too much fun with him my first game, and I wanted to see where everything with the ring would go. So I kept playing him, and that all came to its conclusion. There were a few other things with that entity in the intervening time, but it pretty much all came to a head in March, where um, for several games, I was going on these mods, leading these adventures, and what I was doing is we were piecing together this ancient artifact that that entity had made. Um, every so often having contact with him, and then he helped us to defeat one of the Chaos Lords, the Lord of Decay, by possessing me, my character. He became like
Oh,
a mineral golem, and so I got to have a key part of the really big fight. I got to be the hero and then sacrifice himself, give up one of my vitality to save the plane, because the Lord of Decay was
and
blotting out.
that's a big ask, honestly, getting a new player. Like if you guys go look at the if you're listening and you're new, you should go look at the video covering life and death of your character. Like there's dying and going to the death state, which is like kind of spooky, but like losing your vitality is like big. It's a big deal. So like
Yeah, and
that's like
that was his last pristine vitality. So now,
yeah, that was a
ever
primo
since
one.
then, now when he dies, there's always a chance he could perm. So, but it was worth it. No, but like it was really cool to be able to do that, because he's a paladin. It was really awesome paladin roleplay. So yeah, it was probably my favorite art. Oh, and also that fight concluded with the helmet, his mentor disintegrating. So that was kind of the conclusion of that long 2-year arc for him that I got to see from start to finish.
Did you get to keep the helmet?
I didn't,
Dang.
uh, but I should ask about that, because it's pretty cool. I don't know what they're going to do with it now, but oh yeah, I didn't get to keep the ring either. It also turned to dust.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because like it was fundamentally
Yeah.
attached to that evil guy.
hmm
So that's like a really cool arc then to have gone through.
Oh yeah, it was really cool, and I've seen other new players get to do arcs like that. For example, there is a newer, like I'd say like a year-ish character who ended up getting given a book that's actually a green dragon trapped inside of a book,
What?
and the dragon wants her to put every single spell into him,
What?
into that book. And when she does, something cool will happen. And
Oh,
this is a character who doesn't even fight. She doesn't leave town. She's purely a scholar and a researcher. And Plot was like, this would be a perfect item for her.
is that
Or
what race do they play?
Bunny Beastman. I think you know who it is.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? Oh,
hmm
wow. Yeah, I don't want to say their like name out loud and because they
Yeah,
to
exactly.
respect privacy, but like I totally thought it was gonna be another goblin character that I was thinking
No,
of. But oh no, that's so cool.
My goblin's jealous of that book, but but
Yeah,
no. And it seems like with your first character, Plot will try really hard to help you to feel important.
yeah.
Um,
Like that's a big part of why people
and
come to LARP too, is
you know
we get to stand around and pretend that we're important.
Yeah,
You know?
maybe not every game, because the whole thing is with LARP, it's a cooperative game. There's no main character, but there are some games you do get to feel like the main character, and then some you don't.
Yeah.
And I've done that, and I've just tried not to get discouraged. Sometimes you're not going to feel the most useful. Sometimes you're not going to get the spotlight or anything cool happens to you. Maybe you're going to just kind of mess up a whole bunch. Arden's had some games like that, but it just happens.
Yeah.
We take
Sometimes you're a
turns.
troll and it's the fire adventure, you
Yeah.
know? And sometimes you
Yes.
just yeah.
Exactly. It's just a diverse game with a lot of different things you could play, and sometimes it'll be great for what you are, and sometimes it won't be. It just happens. But um, I've tried to have fun with the downtime as well, bring like games and stuff, medieval period appropriate board games and things.
That was a big thing that I really hope starts like I hope people jump on that culture change because
Yeah.
I've been learning because like American LARPs versus like European LARPs, a
hmm
lot of the European LARP is player driven interaction, and a lot of American LARP has a habit of like chasing the plot and like putting the burden. It's like a heavier burden that we place on our plot marshals,
hmm
and I really want to spend time. I'm really like trying to develop my character in a way that would facilitate player to player interaction as opposed to and like having like it would be such a good thing, and some people are able to achieve this right now, where they can sit in town, talk to people all day, spend production, and like learn about a plot in the world, and that's all they did. They like never left town.
Yeah.
And some people are able to accomplish that right now. And my goal is that like if anybody wants to come in and do that, I want to hopefully like allow them to do that. You know, like that's
Yeah.
a
Because some people prefer that play style. I mean, I like fighting, but
I love fighting too.
and I also like role play too. And when fights aren't going on, when I first started, I would be pretty bored. So I've tried to bring things to do. And as I've gotten to know people and know more about the game, it's gotten easier to have conversations and stuff. Um,
So then, why don't we transition on to the next question here,
sure.
which is what is a thing that, or what is one thing you can point to that you have taken away from playing a given character IRL? So like, have you learned anything about, like, say yourself, through playing a character here at Shifted Lands?
Hmm.
And that's a tough question. Like, that gets a lot of that got a couple other people too.
Yeah.
We can circle back to that too if you want to think about it.
We might need to circle back to well, yeah, I think we might need to circle back to that
Yeah,
one.
because I've personally found that and like a lot of the stories I've heard around LARPing is that like it's really a way to explore a part of yourself. Like you'd say that Beazle is an aspect of yourself, and that like your paladin Arden is a different aspect of yourself,
Yeah,
right? And you get to explore both of those things.
yeah,
And
they're extremes.
yeah, Papageno had a crazy good answer, which is he adopted kids in game, and then he adopted kids in real life. Like that was like the first seedlet, like, and not everybody's gonna
Mhm.
have an answer like that, so we can definitely circle back around to that. So then let's move on to the next question, which is, what would you say to someone who's diving into Shifted Lands? Like maybe they've played their first game, or they haven't showed up to their first game yet, but they're seeing the content, they're reading the rulebook, and they're super excited to try LARPing. What would you say to them to get them more engaged with the game, or just like what would you say to them in general? Like a
All
brand new.
right. So first thing is they might ask, should I PC or NPC my first game? Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're fine.
Oh, sorry. But and I think that you should PC your first game because I've heard, oh, NPC your first game, it's a great way to learn the game. I think it can be a great way to learn game, but not for your first.
I would
Um,
100% agree with NPC your second game or your third game, but your first
yeah,
game you should play.
I think I NPC'd the first time, like my third game, and it was just part-time NPCing. I full-time NPC'd for the first time after several months. But anyway, because the nice thing about PCing is you only have one character to worry about, and you're small, so you don't have that many skills to keep track of. And it's a big game; it's got a complex rule set, so you just get really good at doing those things, and then later in the day, if you run out of pool and you want an NPC, plot would appreciate it, and then you can just be like, hey, can I just play monsters that mostly do what my character does? For me, it was easy because a lot of monsters just do like weapon
The
mastery.
fighting pools, yeah.
Yeah, and it might be harder if you were playing purely a magic user, but and so I would just play um, monsters that were fighty and use weapon mastery for a little. I don't even think I did the whole day. I just did for a little bit, and then I went back into my character because with new characters you do run out of pool pretty quickly, and then you don't feel like you can do as much. Something I would tell them too, and something I wish I did more early on is just really dive into the lore. I mean, I know it's not everyone's thing, but like it's just a good way to avoid boredom is just to learn about the lore, and there's so much because it's a
You can find a
almost
pretty
almost
commonplace bard that will just start talking about anything
yeah.
you want him to talk about.
It's like it's a 25-year-old game. There's a lot of stuff, and some you could even take notes on it, and then you'll be more equipped for stuff that could come up again in the future. But
Arthur
yeah, as far
definitely has a notebook.
yeah, but as far as getting more engaged into the game, definitely what has helped the Discord is very helpful for that because it helps me be able to communicate with the game and talk about stuff in between. And I understand that the Discord wasn't always there. Um,
It's one of the best boons that this game has gotten is this
yeah,
Discord.
and I think it came about because of the pandemic, but even post-pandemic, I think it's really helpful for keeping us connected
I check it
between
every
the
day.
games. Me too. Um,
Yeah, so like the Discord I think is like a total blessing on this game, honestly.
Yeah.
It's where
Now,
most people talk, it's where most people figure out their characters. It's
mhm,
and then there's also tons of community parts to it too. There's usually a good conversation or two that happens each day.
yeah,
And it's just
it's
cool to
true.
read it even if you don't want to like comment or interact. Like
Yeah.
people talk about cool shit on the Discord.
Sometimes people ask questions that I have had, and I don't need to ask them because somebody else asked it and then got an answer. So, um, yeah, the Discord server is great. Um, advice I'd give to someone diving in. Oh yeah, another thing too that I tell people not to worry too much about is having every single thing like bought for their character.
Oh
Honestly,
yeah.
it's probably, and this goes for LARPing in general. I think it's better to, especially with like weapons and stuff, to borrow. And because if you've never LARPed before and
We
you think, oh, I want to go in with a spear, and then you actually, buy a really expensive one and find out you hate fighting with a spear, that really sucks.
That
So
is exactly what I did. My first
it's,
game, I
yeah,
came in with a big two-handed naginata, and the two-handed fighting in Shifted Lands is a very specific play style. It is a
yeah,
very much, and
it's not the most common.
it's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
And I spent $150 on a two-handed sword, on a
yeah.
two-handed weapon. It
With
was tough.
Arden, with Arden, I just rented weapons my first couple games. I did Sword and Shield, figured out that I liked it, and which I thought I would, but I wanted to be sure. And then I went ahead and bought a sword, and then eventually, a little bit later after, I made myself a shield.
Nice. Yeah, and making a shield is like one of the funnest things in this game too. Like I think that like the swords you really kind of have to go for like a nice 45 $50 like decent sword. But with the shields, I feel like they're so customizable and they're so easier to build than like a sword is and get it to pass.
Yeah, that's true. I just got a boogie board covered in duct tape and put some straps on it. So,
Yeah.
if it's foam, they don't mind. So it was pretty easy. But yeah, making weapons is pretty hard. But um,
Yeah, that
yeah,
seems like
those are
pretty
probably
solid
some
advice.
of the things that I would give advice to.
Did you want to circle back to the IRL thing or did you want to put out some closing thoughts? Anything else you wanted to say?
Um, Let me think about something that I've taken. Um, well, maybe this isn't 100% what you're looking for, but I have picked up a lot of new crafting skills, like
Oh,
in
that's
real life.
perfect. That's
In
perfect.
real life, so I started sewing because of LARP because I wanted to make
Oh, I want a sewing machine so bad.
accessories for my character as well as stuff for new characters, and so um, and there are a lot of people in the game who have a lot of talents IRL who have given me advice and helped answer questions and helped me like learn about a lot of stuff when it comes to crafting, like making my shield. And it's been I've dabbled in leatherworking, sewing, jewelry making, and a few other little things that I have been able to uh, make stuff and bring it to game, which is fun. We have a game that's a big like fair in May, and
Oh, the Mayfair, yeah.
I made a bunch of jewelry and brought it in and sold it as my goblin. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, dude, watching like I think the first time I ever saw Beazle, he was at the little stand in one of the Michigan games. He was like selling stuff at his stand, and you like grabbed my attention. You were like, "You want to buy some of my wares?" or however you would say it.
hmm
And I was like, "Oh man, this is neat as hell." It's like a goblin selling stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing cool is I'm not even the only one. I do it occasionally, but like we have like the uh, the guys who I don't know
The
if I should say the name of the shop, but the
Oh no,
guys who
that's
have
completely. The
yeah
shop
the
is
guild
for.
the gilded goblin. I won't name the characters, but like every game they come to, they set up like a whole little store, and it's amazing. It's so
It's
immersive,
so much for the game.
makes you feel like you're in a little town, and they've inspired other people to do little things every once in a while. Toshka has, oh oops, he used a character name, but there's a cat beast man who has done a shop. A couple other characters um, who will set things up every once in a while, and it's really fun. It makes town feel a lot more alive. And the cool thing is for the most part, as long as it's within reason, if you run it by plot, like if you want to have your character provide some type of little service or have a store or a setup or like a special event, like there's a character who has an annual tea party that
Oh yeah.
if you pay a certain amount, you can go to her tea party and it's really fancy and like has good food. If you want to do fun stuff like that, you can. But plot for the most part is okay with it so long as you're safe and following the rules.
Yeah, that falls in under the like the player to player interaction type
Yeah.
stuff. And like that is honestly, as the longer I play this game, the more I crave that type of interaction.
Hmm.
Because I mean, when I started playing this, I was like 16, and I'm a complete combat junkie, like right out the gate. Like I just love playing. Like I love being a fighting character. I love
I mean, that's what
fighting.
got me into the game was or into LARPing in general was fighting. So I totally feel you on that.
Yeah, and then like as I've gotten older, I still love fighting just as much, but exploring the cool part about LARP, which is fantasy beyond the fantasy of like swinging swords and exploring player to player interaction, and the more I start to learn about these characters and the more my character differentiates from myself, has been a really awesome experience. And I'm so glad that we have characters like Arden and we have characters like Beazle in the game, you know? Uh, so thank you so much for coming out on this on this coming out on this Discord channel on this Discord call. Uh, I think we're about the we just hit the 46-minute mark, so I think we're gonna call it there. Did you have any closing statements you wanted to get off your chest, or
Nope, I don't think so. Thanks for interviewing me. I love talking about LARP, so happy to share my experience.
awesome? So www.shiftedlands.com. If you're new and you're just hearing this, go to our website. The Discord link is on there, and it's also somewhere on our Facebook group. You can find us on Facebook, super easy. This has been Clayton with his character Arden and Beazle. Uh, Thank you guys, and see you in the next player interview. Bye.
Bye.